Hello, my name is Claire, and I've done really well with online businesses. My journey here was unexpected. Back in university, I thought I'd end up with a regular job at a typical company, but something changed everything. During my second year, my dad got sick and needed someone to take care of him every day. My mom wasn't great at housework, so we hired caregivers, but they couldn't be there all the time. That meant my mom had to step in sometimes. However, she often ignored my dad's needs, telling him to wait. Whenever this happened, I had to help him out. Seeing this made me worry about the future. When I started working, who would take care of my dad? I couldn't rely on my mom alone, so I began looking into ways to make money from home. I studied online business strategies during university, using what I learned in economics. I teamed up with friends who understood management and finance and others who were skilled with computers. That's how we started our online business project. We even had a nice office where staff could work if they found it hard to concentrate at home or for new employees to learn the ropes. But personally, I hardly ever went there. My main workspace was at home, where I could be with my dad. I did most of my work there. One day, my dad asked me if I had given up on a full-time job for him or if it was hard to find one after graduating. His question made me emotional, but I explained that I had been running my online business since college. It was doing well, and I could work from home without any problems. My dad was proud of me and grateful for what I did. He said I had become a responsible adult, which meant a lot to me. I'm not the only child responsible for taking care of my father. I have an older brother named Jackson, who is 2 years older than me. Jackson tends to be selfish and doesn't often think about others. He has always been really smart and did great in school. After graduating from a top university, he easily got a job at a prestigious company. When we found out about his job, we were surprised but happy for him. We all tried to reach out to congratulate him, but his response wasn't what we expected. He said he was starting a new life in the city and didn't plan to come back home. He wanted us to believe he was doing well on his own, then he abruptly hung up the phone. Since that day, we couldn't get in touch with Jackson at all. He cut off all communication with us, ignoring our calls and messages. Even though our dad had financially supported him through college and while he was living on his own, Jackson never seemed grateful and distanced himself from us. My dad and I were both shocked and disappointed by his behavior. We started to wonder if Mom was secretly talking to Jackson. But even as Dad's health worsened and he needed care every day, Jackson remained completely silent. It was as if he didn't care about his responsibilities as part of the family. Then, one day, we got some unexpected news from Mom. Jackson called me out of the blue. He said he was thinking about getting married and asked if we could give him a wedding gift. He wanted $999,000. Mom told Dad and me about this, looking a bit worried because of our finances. She mostly stayed home except for her part-time job 3 days a week. She usually spent her salary on lunch and shopping with friends, so she didn't save much. I was surprised that Mom even considered giving Jackson so much money, especially since we hadn't heard from him in a long time. At first, Dad was calm, but then he got really mad. "Why should we give him all that money when he hasn't even talked to us since he left home?" he said angrily. He was upset with Mom, who looked unhappy and glanced at me for support. Mom tried to explain. "But think about it, Jackson's getting married. I want him to have a good life and maybe even give us grandchildren. It's what parents want. Please understand," she said calmly. The main reason I didn't go for a regular job was because of Mom, so it hurt to hear her say those things. Dad was upset too. "Claire stays home to take care of me because you didn't help enough. I've supported Jackson a lot, but he's never thanked me. How can you ask for such a big gift for him?" That day, there were loud arguments between Mom and Dad. I listened from the next room, worried about Dad's health. Mom had always favored my brother and praised him, but she didn't understand why I stayed home to care for Dad, and that made me really sad. After Mom left for dinner, Dad turned to me and said, "Claire, thank you for always being here for me." "It's okay, Dad," I replied. "I've known for a long time that Mom favors Jackson. I'm used to it. I know I've asked a lot of you. I just wish I could do more to help you," Dad said with a sigh. "Dad, you've done so much for me. You supported my education and always encouraged me. If it weren't for you, I might not have started my online business," I reassured him. His smile brought me some comfort, but I couldn't understand why Mom, who had such a caring father, acted so selfishly. And Jackson, my brother, who hadn't contacted us for years, suddenly asking for a big wedding gift was hard to swallow. But the most shocking thing happened shortly after. One morning, I found my father unresponsive. I called an ambulance, but it was too late, he had passed away. Many people came to his funeral to pay their respects, showing how loved he was. Normally, the wife would arrange the funeral, but Mom claimed she was too busy and left everything to me. She spent most of her time on her phone, seeming more concerned with it than Dad's passing. I felt angry and unsupported, but I focused on giving Dad a proper send-off. Then something unexpected happened. My brother showed up at the funeral with a woman in a flashy dress. He himself was dressed casually, which was highly inappropriate for the occasion. Everyone was shocked, but Mom greeted him with a smile. "I'm glad you're here, Jackson. Now, your father's inheritance will be ours," she boldly stated. The atmosphere in the hall shifted completely. Everyone was stunned and confused. "Honestly, I don't think Claire should expect any inheritance. She's just been at home taking care of Dad," Jackson said loudly, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I sighed deeply. He must have known about our family situation and Dad's declining health through Mom, yet he ignored the fact that I had contributed significantly to the household finances. And was there even an inheritance left? Dad had required constant care. He had once had a good job, but to discuss finances at a funeral was both inappropriate and disrespectful. The mood remained heavy and tense. "Should we leave now, Jackson? We'll get the inheritance anyway," Mom said, tugging on his arm. As soon as I saw the woman with my brother, I knew she was his wife. She had the same air about her as Jackson, and I figured she must have a personality like his to have married him. I wished they would leave soon. Surprisingly, even Mom seemed to agree with them. "Shall we go get sushi?" she asked. The three of them left without a second thought. Other relatives were just as surprised. Some murmured in shock, but I urged them to remain composed for Dad's sake. I kept my irritation to myself and continued with the funeral. When I returned home, I found the dining table covered in a mess of empty food containers, 3 boxes of sushi, likely ordered for delivery. Laughter and chatter came from the living room. Mom, Jackson, and his wife, Charlotte, were drinking and enjoying themselves. "Hey, you're late, Claire. Can you make some snacks and grab more alcohol?" Jackson asked, as if nothing had happened. I was stunned by their insensitivity, especially on the day of Dad's funeral. Even with the disapproving looks from other relatives, they didn't seem to realize how inappropriate their behavior was. Mom, who should have corrected them, was instead laughing along with them, making me feel justified in staying away from them. I wondered if they would have even arranged a proper funeral if I hadn't been there. "There's no inheritance for you," I finally said. I refused to get them more drinks or snacks. Jackson, now drunk, scowled at me. "What do you mean, Claire? You've always been at home causing trouble for Dad. It's only fair we use his assets." Considering Jackson had relied on Dad for all his college expenses, I couldn't understand why he felt so entitled to what was left. It frustrated me to see him act like he didn't owe Dad anything. "Isn't this house Dad's?" Jackson asked. "As the eldest son, it should be mine. Why is Claire, who does nothing all day, living here?" Mom and Jackson seemed to be in complete agreement. The warmth Mom once had for me was gone. "This house is mine," Jackson said firmly. "I want Claire out." His wife didn't seem the least bit concerned. Mom spoke next. "I feel more comfortable living with my son and his wife, who have done well in life, than with you, Claire." They had no idea how much I had contributed to the house. I felt sad and disappointed, but I finally made up my mind. "I'll leave. But don't ask anything from me ever again," I said. As I packed my things in my room, I overheard my sister-in-law whispering, "She's really poor, don't you think?" They all laughed at my expense. I just smiled bitterly to myself. Right now, I might seem like the most miserable one. But there was something they didn't know. This house had been legally mine since Dad was alive. He entrusted it to me. Even though Mom had lived here for years and might argue she had a right to it, the truth was that it belonged to me. However, after seeing her cold behavior at Dad's funeral, I found myself reconsidering what to do with the house. I was tired of our strained relationship. Living alone in such a big house would be lonely, and maintaining it would be difficult. So, I decided to sell it. Watching Mom and Jackson's family celebrate my supposed downfall without knowing the truth made me pity them. Expecting an inheritance from Dad was ridiculous. Before Mom got sick, she had a stable income. But when her health declined, she couldn't work anymore and had to use her savings to hire someone to help her every day. Now, the house they thought they would inherit was slipping through their fingers. And they had no idea. My mother spent her savings on daily expenses, and even when Dad got sick and required more care, she continued spending as usual until her savings dwindled. When I discovered that Dad's savings were gone, I began contributing $3,000 a month to cover household expenses. Mom handled the housework, but she wasn't good at managing money. When she went shopping, she often made impulsive purchases, buying expensive things we didn't need. She never paid attention to sales or budgeting. The money she earned from her part-time job went toward her hobbies and entertainment. On top of that, she took more money than necessary for household expenses, using it to enjoy herself. Dad felt bad about it, but in the end, all the money he had saved was spent by Mom. As I prepared to leave the house, I withdrew all the money I had been contributing to the household. I couldn't allow my mother to keep using it irresponsibly. The next morning, my phone rang. "Claire, did you take the household money?" Mom's voice came through, sounding surprised and slightly upset. "Mom, what household money?" I asked. "Dad's savings were already gone when I checked." "Did you forget that you spent them all?" I left the ledger on the table. "It shows exactly how you kept withdrawing from Dad's savings." He knew about it too. After his savings ran out, I was the one giving $3,000 every month to support the house. I heard her scrambling in the background, likely searching for the ledger. Then, the living room door opened. "Mom, what's going on? Wasn't there supposed to be an inheritance after Dad passed?" "Did you use it all?" my brother, Jackson, demanded, his voice filled with anger and disappointment. His wife's voice echoed behind him. "I can't believe this, Mom. Did you really call us back here expecting us to support you financially?" "No, that's not what I meant," Mom stammered. It became clear that she had brought them back under the pretense of an inheritance. "We left stable jobs to come here, expecting to receive Dad's inheritance," Jackson continued. "How are we supposed to live now?" "Wait, Jackson, you left your job?" I asked, mildly surprised but not particularly concerned since it had no impact on me. And what about the $2,700 you've been receiving every month? Jackson pressed. Mom, you always said Claire wasn't working. Mom suddenly turned to me, her face filled with shock and guilt. Claire, what's going on? I smiled slightly. You should look into remote work, Mom. These days, people can have jobs without leaving home. I had never told them about my successful online business. I knew that if they found out, they'd start relying on me, or worse, try to interfere. Please come back, Mom's voice was small now, no longer blaming me. Let's be a family again. But I had no intention of returning. Mom, you just want to rely on my money, don't you? As for the house, while Dad was alive, he transferred ownership to me because of the property taxes. It's legally mine now. I don't plan on living there anymore, so I asked Uncle, who runs a real estate agency, to sell it. He was furious about what happened at Dad's funeral, so if Jackson and his family are still staying there, he'll have them evicted. Losing our home. I never imagined this, Mom whispered, stunned. I heard Jackson's voice in the background. What's going on? Feeling too drained to explain further, I left everything to my uncle. He promised to handle things and explain the situation to Mom and Jackson's family. Goodbye, I said firmly. I'm cutting ties with you both. I won't be using this phone anymore. Farewell. With that, I ended the call. I imagined their shock but felt only a brief sadness. It would be difficult for them to track me down. I had plans to move abroad, a dream I had never shared, not even with Dad. I had always wanted to live in a warm tropical country with a rich and diverse culture. When Mom and Jackson's family demanded that I leave the house after Dad's passing, I saw it as the perfect opportunity to finally make that dream a reality. Without hesitation, I began packing and searching for a place abroad. I wanted somewhere peaceful, near the beach, so I focused on finding the perfect location. Now, I'm living alone in a short-term rental apartment near the city center, with excellent transportation links, ideal as I prepare for my move overseas. Meanwhile, Jackson, his wife, and Mom were struggling to find a new place to live after their eviction. They probably hadn't even had time to think about me. By the time I heard they had crammed themselves into a tiny apartment and taken up part-time jobs to survive, I was already settling into my new life abroad. My uncle, still bitter about what had happened, hired a detective agency to discreetly check in on them. They discovered that my family was still spending beyond their means, even borrowing money from risky lenders. If things continued like this, they would likely face even greater trouble with debt collectors. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I had cut ties completely and had no intention of ever seeing them again.